Yeah. There's a moment when we are touched when time stands aside, when going forward or backward does not matter, when the sense of ourself has never been different from a child to the moment when we are now, because it has always been my sense of myself. And when something has touched us that has been what I would call universal, it's yes, I've been waiting to hear that. We go to school, at school I was waiting to hear something, and lots of information and lots of bits and pieces to learn and calculate, but I was waiting for something else. Yeah. And I didn't hear it very often, but I was waiting for it. Yeah. And then, for me, although my English teacher destroyed Shakespeare for me, before he actually had completely destroyed him, there was enough that there was something there that took you beyond the school, beyond how old you are, beyond what you're supposed to do in the future, and beyond whatever is happening at home. Yeah. I went to Assisi with a group, and there's one place called San Damiano, where Santa Chiara, where she built her, in a way, her cloister, but it was not a cloister, it was a space for women. And I felt in that atmosphere a sense of freedom. And all I could feel was that they didn't meditate and pray all day long. I always imagined St. Francis doing that, but not in the women's home, as it were. And I felt they sang songs, and they made beautiful things, and they healed the peasants of their illnesses, and yeah. I felt a joy of being in touch with the divine there that I didn't feel in the little church where St. Francis and the men built to say their prayers. Where the women built it, it was alive. Where the men built it, it was your prayers. And in Assisi, there was a very small church of San Stefano, and on the walls were the murals painted by Giotto. And there I felt at home. I felt in that little place at home. And in San Damiano, I felt the joy of the spiritual path, the joy, not the heavy weight but the joy of discovering the love of God, the love of Christ. Yeah.
So all what you felt at that moment, does it mean that you've been in that place in another life, or just in that moment you've been connected to universe or other dimension?
That's the question. And I live with the question. I live with the question. The area I liked very much. It reminded me, it's a sort of dry, arid type of area with bushes that don't grow that big and not a lot of beautiful flowers actually, but the earth is got a vitality to it. I've seen it I'm from South Africa, I've seen it in the semi-desert there. They call that the Kalahari Desert. I felt that type of energy in the southwest USA, in Arizona and New Mexico. I felt that same energy there. It's a type of earth, and to me that's holy ground. Now it doesn't look very pretty, but the earth and the sky seem to meet, and every day it seems to breathe new life into life. And I felt that then in Assisi, and every place where I felt that, well, not every, but most every place I feel I'm on holy ground is like that. It's that sort of dry, it's a little bit arid, And yet there's an energy there that is so... I worked in Mexico for a short time, about 4 years ago. And what fascinated me was the energy of the young people there. Nothing to do with anything I was doing, I just was interested to see them. And they had this energy, this urgency that I've only seen in holy ground. And I thought then in Mexico there must be almost the possibility of a light center opening, of a light force entering in or awakening. I've never seen young people with that energy there. Now I don't think they were at all aware of anything, they were just themselves. And the country is got every kind of climate and has got every kind of problem. But this was in the children, in the young people, and whatever else was going on, they were going forward. They were carrying this, it's a timeless feeling. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think what I hope is that it touched all of us in a way that we can refer to our own experiences wherever we've gone or whatever we've done. Now, and we are guided to these places. We can be surprised. It can sometimes be uncomfortable. Our memories are not always that great, but it's when it touches us and there is a transcendence and there's no words and we can't talk about it. It's just a state of... It's a state of oneness, it's a state of validation. It's a state of, I don't need to go anywhere or do anything, I'm just here, now, at one. Now, I want to talk about, everybody okay? Do you need a break? We carry on a little bit? I kind of feel this is a chance. And because I wanted to talk about this in the sense of interdimensional relationships. What I see from my work, which is to do with light and color and working with people at a distance. And so, in a way, I spend lots of time looking at energies of people who are a long way away, they're not even there, and trying to interpret these energies in relation to the working of the color and the light, and also in relationship to their request, because they always ask for the work for a certain reason. And my attention has been drawn more and more to the way that the work is through the astral body, through the fourth dimensional vehicle of our consciousness. At night, when we leave our body and we go upstairs to the inner school, we go in our astral body. And when we die physically, our physical body is released. We are in our astral body. And we're able to find ourselves where we belong, we say in the fourth dimension, in the higher worlds, in the realms of light, where we can absolutely bring together a huge amount that is ready to be appreciated so much more once we have passed over. Now, to work within the astral body, there is what we call the karmic matrix. Now, the workshop of the soul always works with principles of light, the principles of the color. All our experience is involved with the awakening and the realization of principles. And if we look at each color, we call it primary, monochromatic, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. If we imagine them not as mixtures, as monochromatic, and also as purely at the frequency of its center point. And then we say that it represents a spiritual principle, or a universal principle. And that principle is not, we put it in words, but it's a state of presence. It's a state of, if we awaken to it, it's a state of becoming. And once it's become, it does never unbecome. It's a state of what some people call gradually building our body of glory, gradually awakening these universal principles that the 7 colors of our visible spectrum represent, embody, transmit, carry. And so, if we think of the red, it could just be courage. And the orange could just be joy, and the yellow could be clarity. And the green could be generosity. And the blue could be truth, and the indigo could be deep mystery, inner meaning. And the violet can be the union of all that transcends spiritual becoming. And if we look at our lives, and we took 5 problems, or maybe just 3 problems that we have at the moment, if you can think of 3 problems: the gas bill, repairs for the car, and tax. 3 problems. And then if we try to see, because these could be problems in relationships, it could be problems to do with our health. If we could try to see which principle, which divine or spiritual principle might be at the essence of this problem, what type of principle would enable me to manage this? Do I really need to be forgiving? Do I need to be patient? Do I need to be more present and express myself more clearly, more directly? Now, every single experience is experienced at every single level. Whatever the situation, the problem, it will be physical, emotional, mental, it will be psychic or interdimensional, and then it will be transcendental. Every single experience has its resonance. It's happening at every single level. And all our experiences are linked to the realization, every experience, all experiences at all levels are linked to the realization then of what we call a soul talent or gift, and a spiritual principle or a spiritual virtue. And you can think about that. But the whole of life is to the realization of the principle of the pure, clear, transparent light. We call it a white light, but it is the light that has all the other colors within it. And if we look at sunlight, it goes wrong past our visible spectrum. It's enormous. Visible spectrum is a tiny thing. But the visible spectrum still contains the 7 principles, the 7 virtues, the 7 gifts, the 7 talents. And all of us are working with at least one of them right now. And if we look at a problem and we ask in ourselves, what could resolve my Maybe it doesn't resolve the problem, it resolves my place within the problem, or my attitude towards the problem, or my way of just dealing with the situation. What could be the spiritual principle? And if we find 5 different problems, this needs a bit longer, but we'll find there will be a common factor. There will be one factor with a little bit of work and a little bit of exchange and dialogue and looking and this, but we'll find that there will be there's problems manifest in relation to the specific purpose. The specific purpose will involve the realization of a spiritual principle, and the spiritual principle will have a reference to one of the colors, one of the pure colors, or one of the chakra colors. Pure, clear, monochromatic color. Now, it simplifies, in my opinion, it simplifies a little bit all the things that we are talking about. And then once you get, if you get, even as we think about it here, as you get a sense of what the principle might be, the principle can be translated, can be looked at from many points of view. It's never just one word. But it will be one word for us at the moment. And may just be trust. I have a friend in the town I'm living who needs to find a new place to live, or she'll be out on the street. And if she's out on the street, she needs to be on support from the local authorities. And she's had the place to live for years. The place has to change. And she's very desperate. It's getting close to the point where she has to get out of where she's living. And quite a number of people have tried to help her, the Member of Parliament, the different... And when I tune in, I know she'll get the place, but it hasn't come yet. I know there is a place for her, but will it be in time? If it isn't in time, there will be a way that she can survive until there is the place. I know that. But what can I do? Except to say that I'm saying this to you in trust. I always, when I link with this, there is a positive feeling. There is no doubt. But in fact, there's enormous doubt because there's no confirmation. Nearly, but then the people who were going to provide it decided not to. Nearly 2 or 3 times. And so, and for her it is a very desperate time. And yet I know she'll find it. And I have no doubt. And at the same time, the soul has chosen this experience. And this experience, the soul is going to milk that experience for everything it can. Because she's asked for it. She's very much dedicated. At the same time, she's a little bit naughty. And so yeah, but so lovable and likable. And but I can't preach to her because I've been in similar. I am in similar situations in some ways, but I've been in similar situations, and I can't patronize her. I can only walk with her, and at least share that in my feeling. Absolutely. Now, what is she learning through that? She got, in a way, if she won't mind if I'm talking about it, but in a way she got a little bit too used to being on support, a little bit too used to finding a little way around how to do a few things and make a little extra here and there. And fine, except that her gifts have not been awakened sufficiently. But she makes beautiful, I don't know what to call them, like pictures, but on the pictures she writes words, but the words are in specially constructed material. And so I think for last Christmas she gave me quite a big one. I think it's just love on it, just love. And I have it in my passage, and when people walk past they say, oh, that's really nice. I didn't know what to do with it. I thought it's too heavy to hang on the wall, and I can't, I'm very grateful, it's very nice, but I would have liked a smaller one and that said something else, like Chelsea are going to win the cup. And so she makes these beautiful things, and they're little treasures. And something is, and I everybody's life is an adventure story, and so on. So the only thing is, what is the virtue that she is working with now? What is it? What is it? It's in a way it's trust, and in order to trust she has to reach out, ask the Member of Parliament, knock on doors, write letters. She can't just sit there and wait and do nothing. She can't. She has to do something. And so, and she's more or less hidden away for years. And now she has met some quite important people, and they all like her. But they haven't solved her problem personally. They've just been with her to help her to come, hopefully, to the point. So what I see is from the fifth dimension, the workshop of the soul, there is a line of light which comes right to the crown chakra of the astral body. The crown chakra of the astral body is absolutely a map of what are the disciplines in our life, what are the reasons why we are here, what are the forces at work that we have actually created through our past actions. And here they manifest, and we meet them, but we don't recognize them, but we can't resist them, and we can't escape them. And these, when it comes into the crown chakra, it immediately sets up the frequencies between our deep subconscious and our ordinary rational feeling and thinking. But it doesn't set up a connection that's so comfortable. It stimulates the need to break free of certain attitudes or patterns. But not so it terrifies us. It doesn't work that way. It does sometimes, but it doesn't really work that way at first anyway. It encourages. And the word encourage has got courage. Now, what is interesting is when the crown chakra has been touched by the impulse of the workshop of the soul, or from the higher self, it's almost as if the source behind this life has remembered that we exist. Because we can live and feel we're forgotten, we're cut off. And then suddenly they look down and think, I think we can do something with that project now. And then, as it is anchored, a few things happen. The one is that it absolutely shoots right down the spine, and it begins to open the most forceful force of all forces. The Kundalini is not opened in an exaggerated way, it's nothing like that. But it opens up the life force, the impulse that switches on the lights. But it always switches it on very subtly. Sometimes there is an explosion, sometimes there is instant transformation, but mostly, and almost always, it just begins to change wherever we've gone to sleep. Now, having anchored to the root chakra, there's a number of things that happen. The one, as I observe it, is that it goes into the solar plexus. Now the solar plexus, in the deep subconscious level, from the karmic perspective, is always involved with group experiences, with collective type of experiences from the past. And it always brings up, we may have involved in a group which was persecuted. We've been through experiences which we've shared with others which have had a very powerful and deep traumatic effect. In our ordinary life, they become points of anxiety, points of uncertainty, points of self-doubt, points almost as if I deserve to be punished, and all of that. We meet situations, and if these often have a family connection going through some generations, or certainly with whole groups. And as this light from the higher self, from the workshop of the soul, enters in, it begins, the collective, we say the collective unconscious, it begins to bring points of light, or begins to dilute its darkness or its shadow. Now it means in these times, because what I see in our work is not just in our work, it's what's happening to mankind. And the color work is a research area in interdimensional medicine. And so I know that there is a freeing of collective suffering, a freeing of collective areas of fixation, a freeing of areas of collective trauma. All of these areas are behind addiction and compulsion. They all are areas which belong to seeking a form of release through some form of, we could say, self-medicating in some way, or choices of action that are really self-destructive or antisocial. And when we see this coming in, I ask, why is it working now? Why couldn't it work 50 or 100 years ago? There are enough people holding the light at the same time of a certain frequency of receptivity or presence. And then it's like an infection. It's almost like a healing plague. It starts off and then it spreads. And it's irresistible. And that people will get better in spite of themselves. And sometimes if people come for help, the first mistake they made was to come and ask for help, come in the atmosphere. Because that absolutely won't let them stay where they are. And it will start to work and shift them and change them. And then they don't want to get better. They were comfortable, but they wanted a relief from discomfort that they didn't like. But it's too late. Now, what is interesting is that this then works from the astral body into the physical body. And so we've got the interdimensional flow from the workshop of the soul to the astral body, which has the karmic matrix, which is, our fate in a way. And from there, it begins to work into the areas of collective fixation and collective traumatic shock memory. And then it begins to work into what we call then the etheric fields of the physical body, the etheric body that gives life and healing to the physical body. And there we begin to see the awakening of the first and second chakras in a different way. And that's really interesting. The chakra system begins to work not so much separately, but together. The first and second chakras work as one chakra. And then we see the first three chakras work as one chakra. That below the diaphragm, the chakras become one chakra. And I'm not trying to tell you that this is what is happening. I'm just saying, feel it and think into it and see where it brings you and put it to the test in some way. Now, with the shift in the first and second chakra energy, we are receiving from the center of the earth, a different frequency of light. We can actually receive it. In the past we couldn't, we were not receptive to it. It didn't work, didn't do anything. Now it literally activates the first and second chakra. So that as we're talking about it, it is also meditating on it. So the energy in the first and second chakra, in accepting, receiving the impulse of new frequencies of light from the earth, and essentially from the center of the earth, it flows straight through the heart. It flows straight to the heart. And as it flows through to the heart, it literally flows right over the left side of the body and to the crown. Now, what is happening and I'm only giving you my own view and opinion, and then you can see how it resonates with you. It begins to flow, so it is flowing backwards and forwards in memory. It flows backwards and forwards through the life of the individual, through the pathways of their remembering. It begins to work to lift the tensions in the solar plexus, heart, in the spleen and the pancreas. And it follows the line, taking us right back to our birth. But it doesn't just follow it, it follows it and it returns, and as it returns, it's following its return. So that simultaneously the light is flowing through our memory to our childhood, to our birth, and simultaneously it's flowing through to the first and second chakras. And each time it flows through, it very gently, in a very subtle way, will lift a shadow or something that is a little bit resistant, or what we like sometimes to call imprints of conditions that we have passed through, but a little bit of their memory remains, like a message which is a negative message. Now, it flows backwards and forwards in a way that is almost unseen. It takes only the subtlest vibrations, but it flows through until all the fixed points in our gestation, our birth, and then our first 7 years, and then our first 14 years, and then our first 21 years, and then the first 28 years. It works to dissolve what we might call the script that we have written in the first 7 years very much, that then we live our script. Now, I think essentially that remains. But the self-limiting, self-defeating side that doesn't allow the light of our own giftedness to come through, this begins to clear. And when I see that, I know that their family history will be resolved. Whatever it is, it may still be difficult and everything, but the destructive side of it will be resolved. We still have to do our homework. We might have to make amends. We might have to do things, but essentially the destructive repetitional process will lift. It will diminish. So that means socially there should be a little bit less crime. Socially there should be a little bit less of the abuse of life. And on and on and on. And there should also be then the recognition of activities which are just nice, good, encouraging. Not too holy or anything, but just better. Now, what happens then is that through the heart, and I've never seen a heart without shadows. Maybe Mother Mira has a heart without shadows, but I haven't been blessed by her. But I imagine she has a heart without shadows. Maybe Amma. I haven't been hugged by Amma, but I've friends who have worked with her and traveled with her, and I've seen. And I think she has a heart without shadows, absolutely. What shows itself is the lifting of the shadows carried in the feminine heart and the lifting of shadows carried in the masculine heart. And these are shadows that are very personal and individual, but they're actually collective. From the feminine side, it is the sacrifice of having children that over many hundreds of years, the infant mortality was so high that birth and death are so close together, and that the whole sense of love and the divine feminine have been under so much pressure for so long from so many different directions. And this is clearing, it's lifting. The shadows carried in the feminine heart are lighter when I look there and I see them in this person and that person. And then I know it's not just that they've come to us for therapy and it's what's happening amongst. The masculine heart, I see that at the time of the Industrial Revolution, you know, the men were taken off the land and they went to work in factories for jobs that had no satisfaction, no dignity, no honor. And they could not earn enough to support their family. There was no pride. And then the women sacrificed their sons in battle, and the men sacrificed their souls trying to provide for their families. Now these are all the shadows that are there, and they've gone on forever. And what happens if these are lifting now? How will we choose our professions and choose our relationships when these areas are cleared? What shows in such an interesting way is that this light gradually works to the first 28 years, which is the first series of 4 sevens, which links to the physical, the etheric, the astral, and the causal. These are all different levels of interdimensional relationships in the nature of our consciousness. It doesn't really matter exactly what's what, only that this is the relationships between the subtle and the material, that it's absolutely specific to the individual, but it is also part of the collective. And through the harmonic resonance of our state of being within each level, so we meet and share with the people with whom we feel these affinities. And karma very often tunes the instrument, which we have to then retune as we allow our own individuality to emerge. Now, at a certain moment we see that the whole of the first 28 years is in the light. It's in the light. It's not totally, it's not clear, but it's in the light, and it is no longer under the shadow of ignorance, we say, of the ignorance of repetitional imprints. Information that is like a recording that just repeats itself. Now, what does that mean? Because it means that if our first 28 years are brought into that, we say, into a harmonic resonance of a certain reliable and consistent level, then our self-work is also worthwhile. We are good enough for more energy and more light to come through from the higher self. That's the point. We don't have to become perfect. We don't have to exhaust ourselves with our self-work. And we are in a good enough state to be overshadowed or inspired by the light within us, or the collective light that is shared amongst us. And this I see. Now, parallel to this in one way comes the opening of the heart. And this is so interesting, because through the heart what we call the consciousness soul comes in, the soul that has its own sense of self. And in the heart as a center is energized, and it can be measured. There is research into this, and it covers the whole of the body. The heart becomes the center of the body, which becomes a whole brain. It doesn't become the brain in the head and all the other bits, and it becomes a whole brain. The whole of the body is the brain, and the heart becomes the center. Now, I like that so much that even if it's not true, I want it to be true. But this is the way it shows itself. And the way the heart is activated, it also secretes certain substances, a little bit like hormones, that enters the bloodstream, that enters the brain, that literally trigger open centers in the brain. And these centers are receptive to the light that comes through from the higher self, through the fourth dimensional self, or the astral body, or the karmic structures. And we are centered through the heart. Now, the solar plexus is the old heart in a way. The heart is the new center. And this brings our relation to the sun and the rays of the sun and the light of the sun more directly. And through the feminine, it frees the subconscious domination of the moon. So what does that mean? Can we imagine that if the relation of the feminine to the sun is increasing and to the moon is becoming more conscious or voluntary, in one way it will change the nature of the experience of menstruation, which means that contraception is conscious. Conception is more conscious. And that relation to the moon is not problematic and not an obligation in a way. It is harmonic resonance.